Her name was Natasha Marlowe, a 34-year-old woman living in Copenhagen, Denmark, and for most of her life, she believed she understood how the world worked. She woke up early, rushed through the cold Scandinavian mornings, balanced her responsibilities as a graphic designer, a daughter, a sister, and a woman who often felt like she was supposed to have everything figured out. But deep inside, Elena carried questions she had never dared to speak aloud. She wondered why her heart felt heavy even on peaceful days. She wondered why she felt alone even when surrounded by people who loved her. She wondered if God saw her, or if he had already forgotten her name. And like so many of us, she carried these doubts quietly, pressed between deadlines, family gatherings, and the invisible expectations of adulthood. She tried meditation, podcasts, new books, new routines, anything that might silence the restlessness inside her chest. But nothing ever lasted. Nothing ever touched the ache. What Elena did not know, what she could not have known, was that everything in her life was about to change. Not slowly, not gently, but in a single moment that would tear open the barrier between this world and the next. She did not know that a near-death experience awaited her. She did not know she would meet Jesus face to face. She did not know she would be shown 4 events that Jesus said would unfold in January 2026, events that would shake nations and awaken millions. And she certainly did not know that she would return, carrying a message that would feel heavier than breath itself. In this testimony, Elena shares details she once refused to talk about, moments she tried to bury, visions she feared people would mock, truths that made her tremble the first time she spoke them aloud. But after nearly losing her life, she realized something. When heaven gives you a message, silence becomes impossible. She says she did not choose this experience. It was given to her, and it came with a responsibility she could never ignore again. As you listen to her story, I invite you to open your heart, not just your ears. This testimony is not entertainment. It is not a story meant to be consumed and forgotten. It is a warning, a calling, and for many, a confirmation of something they have already felt stirring inside. Before we begin, Elena asks you one question, a question that changed her life the moment she answered it honestly. Have you ever felt that something big is coming, even if you can't explain why? Write your answer in the comments. Your words might encourage someone who is feeling the same thing but is afraid to admit it. Before the accident that would tear open the veil between life and eternity, Elena Marlowe lived what many would call a normal life. But normal does not always mean peaceful. At 34, she had built a respectable career as a freelance graphic designer, known for her clean Scandinavian aesthetic and her ability to visually translate emotions into color. People admired her work, but few understood the loneliness behind it. Freelancing allowed flexibility, yes, but it also meant long nights, unpredictable income, and the constant pressure to prove herself. She lived alone in a small apartment near the canals of Copenhagen. The rooms were filled with soft light, warm blankets, plants she tried to keep alive, and a desk cluttered with sketches and coffee mugs. Her life was quiet, but sometimes too quiet. Her family lived nearby, yet even surrounded by familiar faces, Elena felt like an outsider to her own existence. Her mother often encouraged her to settle down, find someone, start a family. Her younger sister, already married with a baby, seemed to have unlocked a secret Elena simply couldn't access. And then there were the nights, those silent, drifting hours when the world went still, and Elena's thoughts grew loud enough to echo. She wondered why she felt disconnected from her own purpose, why she felt she was meant for something, but had no idea what that something was. Why she sensed a presence watching her at times, not in fear, but in longing. She prayed occasionally, but without conviction. God, if you're real, do you hear me? Do you see me? Most nights, she would fall asleep before receiving an answer. Her doubts were not born from rebellion, but from exhaustion. Life had worn her down gently, not violently. And that's the kind of emptiness most people never notice until it swallows them. Still, despite the quiet ache inside her, Elena was generous. She volunteered at a community center twice a month, helped her elderly neighbor carry groceries, and went out of her way to make strangers feel seen. She didn't realize she was giving away the very thing she needed most: compassion. Yet beneath all of this normalcy, something else was happening. A pressure she couldn't explain. A stirring she couldn't ignore. A growing sense that her life was moving toward an unseen crossroads. She began having vivid dreams of bright light, distant voices, and moments that felt too real to dismiss. She woke with the sensation of being called by name, not loudly, but tenderly, like a whisper brushing her soul. Still, she brushed it off. People have strange dreams all the time, she told herself, but heaven was already preparing her. Her heart was being softened, her senses were being sharpened, and her spirit, without her realizing, was being pulled toward destiny. Elena had no idea that within days, her life would be torn apart and rebuilt. No idea that she would cross the boundary between life and death. No idea that she would stand before Jesus himself. If she had known what would soon happen, she says she would have lived those last ordinary days differently. She would have hugged her family longer. She would have looked at the sky more often. She would have listened, truly listened, to the whispers she ignored. But destiny does not wait for our readiness. It arrives exactly when heaven decides. Before we move on, let me ask you, the viewer, have you ever felt a quiet emptiness, even when your life looks fine from the outside? What do you think that emptiness is trying to tell you? Write your reflection in the comments. Your words might unlock someone else's healing. For most of her adult life, Elena lived in a quiet tug-of-war between belief and doubt. She wasn't an atheist, but she wasn't committed to faith either. She floated, somewhere between longing and uncertainty, between curiosity and caution. She believed there might be something beyond this world, but she feared being wrong, being disappointed, or being naive. Her upbringing had been culturally Christian, like many families in Denmark. Holidays, hymns, traditions. But deep relationship with God, conversations about eternity, crying out in prayer, that was foreign to her world. Still, she carried questions inside her that she could never silence. Why did she feel watched over at times? Why did she sometimes sense a warmth around her when she cried? Why did she feel like someone wanted her attention? Someone gentle, patient. The thoughts came and went like waves, always returning, always unanswered. Her friends described her as introspective, a deep feeler. She would smile politely whenever conversations drifted toward spirituality. But inside, she felt like her soul was knocking on a door she didn't know how to open. And then, there was the void. That quiet, almost physical emptiness that lived in her chest. A space she carried everywhere. It appeared most often at night, when her screens were off, when her hands stopped working, when inspiration faded and the world fell still. It was a strange sensation. Not pain, not sadness, but absence. The awareness that something essential was missing. Some nights she pressed her hand over her heart, because the emptiness felt so deep she wondered if it might swallow her. She tried to fill it with productivity, with hobbies, with new courses, with exercise routines. She tried self-help books, meditation apps, and even crystals recommended by a friend who swore they helped her align energies. But nothing touched the void. There were moments, rare, fleeting, when she felt something close to peace. Walking by the water, or watching sunlight hit snow, or hearing a child laugh in the distance. Those moments stirred something in her, as if reminding her of a world she had forgotten. But peace never stayed. Not truly. Not in a way that lasted. Elena felt guilty for this emptiness. She knew she had a roof over her head, a supportive family, opportunities many people never receive. So why wasn't she fulfilled? Why did she feel incomplete? She wondered if something was wrong with her, if she was broken in a way others weren't, if she was missing whatever inner spark made people feel alive. But the truth, a truth she did not yet understand, was that what she felt was not brokenness. It was longing. Longing for the one who created her. Longing for a connection her soul remembered, even if her mind did not. Longing for the creator she had sensed but never encountered. Elena didn't know it then, but the emptiness inside her wasn't a flaw. It was an invitation, a gentle pull from heaven, a whisper from the one who had been watching her since the day she was born, a space designed to be filled by the presence of God alone. And the more the void grew, the closer she unknowingly moved toward the encounter that would change everything. Her doubts were not barriers, they were stepping stones. Her questions were not failures, they were beginnings. Most importantly, the one she thought she couldn't reach, the one she feared she might be disappointing, was already reaching for her. Viewers, let me ask you something deeply personal. Do you ever feel a void inside you? A silence or emptiness that nothing in this world seems able to fill? What do you think that emptiness is calling you toward? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your honesty may remind someone else that they are not alone. The day everything changed began like any other. Quiet, cold, and deceptively ordinary. It was a Friday morning in late November. The sky over Copenhagen was a dull gray blanket, the kind that made the city feel muted and slow. Elena woke up feeling slightly tired but otherwise normal. She made her usual breakfast, toast, berries, and strong coffee, and sat by her window to answer client emails. Nothing about the morning hinted at danger. Nothing suggested heaven was preparing to intervene. Nothing warned her that she had only hours left to live. Around noon, she left her apartment to meet a client across town. She remembered feeling unusually distracted, as if her thoughts were floating rather than focusing. Several times while walking to the metro, she felt a strange heaviness in her chest. Not pain, but awareness. A sense that something invisible was drawing close. She brushed it off as stress. Her client meeting went smoothly, but as she stepped outside, the cold wind hit her with unexpected force. She zipped her coat, adjusted her bag, and started toward the pedestrian crossing. She remembered hearing church bells from somewhere in the distance, soft, almost ghostly. And then it happened. Not slowly, not kindly, but in a violent blur that tore her world apart. A delivery truck, its driver distracted by a vibrating phone on the seat beside him, sped through the intersection. Elena had already stepped into the crosswalk. She did not see the truck, and the driver did not see her. Witnesses would later say it was like watching two separate realities collide. She recalled the exact moment her senses exploded. The roar of the engine, the screech of tires slipping on wet pavement, a flash of white light, too bright, too sudden, a shockwave of fear that froze her heart mid-beat. Her final conscious thought was simple and instinctive. I'm not ready. Then everything shattered. The impact threw her body several meters across the pavement. Bystanders screamed. Someone dropped a bag of groceries. A man ran toward her. The world filled with chaos. But Elena heard none of it, because as soon as her body hit the ground, something inside her went silent. Time thinned. Sound faded. The cold air no longer pressed against her skin. She did not feel the broken bones. She did not feel the blood leaving her body. She did not feel the panic around her. Instead, she felt herself slipping, gently, almost peacefully, out of her body. She later described it like this. It was as if the world turned off. One moment I was in pain and confusion, and the next I was weightless, quiet, a stillness deeper than sleep, deeper than dreaming. The people around her were frantic, but she could no longer hear their voices. The ambulance sirens in the distance did not reach her. The city noise faded into absolute nothingness. Her final sensation before fully leaving her body was surrender, not chosen, but inevitable. The body she had lived in for 34 years suddenly felt like a shell she no longer needed. Then darkness, not frightening darkness, but soft, velvety, restful darkness. A curtain falling, a doorway opening. The moment she died was not violent from the inside. It was quiet, weightless, as if she had stepped into another atmosphere entirely. In that silence, beautiful and terrifying in its purity, Elena understood something with absolute clarity. Her life on Earth had ended. Before we continue, I want to ask you, the viewer, have you ever felt that life can change in a single, unexpected moment? Do you believe destiny can shift without warning? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may resonate deeply with someone going through a silent battle. Elena had always imagined that dying would feel like suffocating, or drowning, or being swallowed by fear. She thought her final moments would be chaos, a desperate fight for breath, for time, for more life. But when the moment truly came, it was nothing like she expected. The transition between life and death was soft. Not gentle, but soft. Like falling onto a bed you didn't know was there. As she lay on the pavement, her chest barely rising, her vision fading to a gray blur, her consciousness loosened like a thread being pulled from fabric. She no longer felt the cold. She no longer felt pain. She no longer felt the weight of her body. Instead, she felt herself drifting. Her final breath did not feel like a last breath at all. It felt like an exhale after holding tension for years. A release she didn't know she was waiting for. The sounds around her, shouting voices, frantic instructions, someone crying, dissolved. Everything became distant, as though submerged underwater. Even the harsh November wind that moments earlier had stung her cheeks now felt irrelevant, disconnected from her reality. Then came the silence. A silence so complete, so absolute, that it felt alive. She was suspended in a space where time didn't exist, where movement didn't matter, where identity felt both present and fading. She was aware of herself, yet not attached to herself. Her thoughts became clearer, but her emotions softened into something calm, almost serene. Later, she would describe it this way. It felt like the world disappeared, and I was held in a silence that was not empty, but full of meaning, full of presence, full of something I didn't yet understand. There was no fear, not even a fragment of it. In fact, fear seemed impossible in that place. Instead, she felt curiosity, a strange, expanding awareness that she was slipping into something far bigger than the life she had known. Her senses changed. She could no longer feel her limbs or the ground beneath her, but she could feel existence, pure, unfiltered, without the noise of human limitation. She was floating, yet grounded, awake, yet beyond consciousness, dead, yet more alive than she had ever felt. The darkness surrounding her was not like a night sky. It was more like a veil, opaque, yet breathing with anticipation. She felt as though something was waiting on the other side, something purposeful and intelligent. And then, the realization sank into her with undeniable clarity. I've left my body. There was no panic at this thought. It felt natural, as though death was not an ending, but a change of rooms. Suddenly, memories flickered through her mind. Not a life review, not yet, but snippets. Her mother's smile, the smell of cinnamon at Christmas, the sound of rain against her childhood window, the laugh of her little niece, the soft glow of sunsets over the canals. She felt gratitude. She felt sorrow. She felt awe. Yet even these emotions faded into the growing awareness that she no longer belonged to the earthly world she had known. Then came something unexpected, something she could only describe as a pull, a gentle drawing, like gravity, yet not physical. It wasn't dragging her. It was inviting her. It felt familiar, as though she had felt this pull long before she was born. The silence deepened. Her awareness sharpened. The veil began to thin. Someone was approaching. This was the final moment before her out-of-body experience would fully begin. The moment right before she stepped beyond the boundary of this world into the realm of eternity. But before we enter that chapter, I want to ask you, what do you believe happens in the exact moment of death? Do you think awareness continues, or everything simply stops? Write your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection may touch someone who fears death and needs hope. The first thing Elena became aware of was light. Not bright, not blinding, but soft and silver, like moonlight drifting through water. It wasn't coming from a single direction. It surrounded her, filling the space where her consciousness now floated. She didn't have eyes in the way she once understood them, yet she could see with perfect clarity. Below her, far below, she saw a scene that felt both familiar and foreign. Her body, lying motionless on the cold pavement, people kneeling beside her, a paramedic pressing on her chest, a woman crying into her hands, the truck driver shaking uncontrollably, unable to look at what he had done. But the strangest thing was not that she could see her body. It was how she felt about it. There was no panic, no desperation to return, no fear of losing herself. In fact, she felt almost detached, like she was looking at an old photograph of a life she once lived but no longer belonged to. She hovered above the scene, but not in a fixed form. She was awareness, presence, consciousness, free from weight, from pain, from boundaries. Everything felt clearer. The world below looked sharper, as if her perception had moved beyond the limits of human sight. She could see details she would never have noticed before. The trembling fingers of the paramedic, the condensation of each breath in the icy air, the reflection of flashing ambulance lights in a puddle nearby. She felt no heartbeat, yet she was more alive than ever. She had no lungs, yet she felt a sense of breath, light, effortless. She had no physical form, yet she felt whole. Then something even more impossible happened. She could feel the emotions of the people around her, not hear them, not guess them, but experience them. The fear in the paramedic, the guilt and horror in the truck driver, the shock spreading through the crowd, the quiet grief inside the elderly woman who watched from a distance. Each emotion touched her simultaneously, not in a painful way, but with a profound clarity, as if she were being shown the depth of human experience without the filter of her own perspective. She felt love for them all, a tender, overwhelming compassion she had never known before. Not sentimental love, pure love, a love that saw the world without judgment. Then, as she hovered above the scene, she sensed something shifting behind her, a change in the atmosphere, a vibration, gentle but powerful, like the air trembling before a thunderstorm. She turned, without turning, and found herself facing a tunnel, not a tunnel of stone or space, but a passage of shimmering light. It pulsed softly, almost like it was breathing. Warmth radiated from it, wrapping around her like the embrace she never knew she needed. She felt drawn toward it instantly. The pull she had sensed earlier grew stronger, but it didn't feel forced. It felt like recognition, like this was the place her soul had always known, but had forgotten during her life on Earth. She felt peace, deep, expanding, infinite peace, and then a presence emerged from within the light. At first she could see only a silhouette, tall, radiant, gentle. The moment she perceived this presence, the entire realm around her shifted. The light brightened, the silence deepened. Every part of her consciousness bowed in awe, not out of fear, but out of overwhelming reverence. She knew instantly. This was not an angel, not a guide, not a random spiritual being. This was holy. This was love itself approaching her. And as the figure moved closer, the atmosphere grew so full of warmth that it brought her to what she can only describe as tears of the soul. Emotion beyond emotion, truth beyond language. She did not yet see his face, but she already knew. Someone was coming. Someone she had longed for without realizing it. Someone who knew her name before she ever learned to speak it. Before we continue, let me ask you, do you believe consciousness can exist outside the body? Have you ever sensed a presence or moment that felt beyond the physical world? Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else feel understood. The presence moved toward her slowly, though movement in that realm was nothing like movement on Earth. It felt more like intention, like the light itself was bending to make space for the one who was approaching. As the figure drew closer, the shimmering tunnel brightened until it felt like the entire atmosphere was breathing in sync with this being. Waves of warmth rolled over her, each one deeper than the last, each one dissolving pieces of fear and heaviness she had carried for years without realizing it. And then, she saw him. Not fully at first, just the outline of a man wrapped in living light. Light that didn't shine on him but radiated from him, as though love itself had taken form. The closer he came, the more the realm responded. The colors shifted. The air grew warmer. The silence turned holy. Elena didn't question who he was. Her soul recognized him before her mind even formed the thought. This was Jesus. Not the distant figure she had seen in paintings, not the theological concept debated in books, but the living, radiant Messiah whose presence was unlike anything a human heart could ever imagine. The moment she understood who he was, her consciousness collapsed into a flood of emotion so intense she wondered if a spirit could fall to its knees. She felt small yet deeply known, fragile yet infinitely loved, unworthy yet completely accepted. Jesus didn't speak, not at first. He didn't need to. His presence was communication. The love she felt was not symbolic or poetic. It was tangible, alive, a force so overwhelming she thought it might break her, but not in a painful way, in a healing way. Like every shattered piece of her soul was being pulled back into place. She felt exposed, not in shame, but in truth. Standing before him was like looking into a mirror that showed not her appearance, but her essence, her regrets, her wounds, her dreams, her failures, her longings, all visible, all understood, all embraced. Jesus stepped closer, and when his face became clear, she said everything inside her changed forever. His eyes were unlike anything she had seen, deep, endless, filled with a compassion that made her feel as if she had never truly been loved before that moment. They held galaxies of understanding. They held eternity. They held her. He smiled, not a casual smile, but a smile that seemed to speak an entire language of reassurance. Before he said a word, the meaning filled her spirit. You are safe. You are mine. And I have always been with you. Those words didn't reach her as sound. They entered her like warmth spreading through the deepest parts of her being. Elena tried to speak, but she had no voice, not because she lacked ability, but because she lacked words. Human language was too small for what she felt, too limited for the magnitude of his presence. Jesus extended his hand toward her. The gesture was simple, yet she felt universes shift. The whole realm seemed to hold its breath. When her consciousness reached toward him, she felt something indescribable. A connection, a merging, a recognition so ancient she wondered if her soul had known him long before her earthly birth. He placed his hand upon her shoulder, lightly, gently, and the moment he did, she felt healing rush through her in waves. Pain she didn't know she carried disappeared. Regrets she thought were permanent dissolved. The void she had lived with for years filled instantly, as though it had never existed. She cried, not with tears, but with pure spiritual release. Jesus spoke then. His voice was unlike sound. It was truth, resonance, vibration. It felt like it moved through her, rewriting something inside her. And the first thing he said was, Elena, I have something to show you. Before we move forward, let me ask you, if you could ask Jesus one question, what would it be? Write your question in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else who is searching. Jesus stood before her, radiant and impossibly calm, as if the entire realm existed in harmony with his presence. Nothing about him felt rushed. Nothing felt uncertain. He carried the quiet authority of someone who did not need to prove anything, because truth itself emanated from him. Elena felt her spirit trembling, not from fear, but from awe. She knew she stood before the one billions had prayed to, doubted, rejected, worshipped, misunderstood, loved, and sought for centuries. And yet, he was looking directly at her, as if she were the only soul in existence. His eyes were steady, warm, unyieldingly kind. When he spoke, it felt like his voice arrived before the words themselves, a resonance that filled the atmosphere, vibrating through every part of her consciousness. Elena, he said, speaking her name with a tenderness that made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced on earth. You have searched for me without knowing you were searching. The words pierced her, not painfully, but like truth finally finding its home. She wanted to respond, to confess everything, her doubts, her fears, her distance, her longing, her emptiness. But Jesus lifted a hand gently, as if to tell her there was no need to explain. He already knew. Then he stepped closer, and the light around him shifted, brightening, deepening, making his presence even more overwhelming. She sensed the realm leaning toward him, as though the fabric of eternity bowed in reverence. And then he spoke the words that would echo in her soul, long after she returned to earth. I am the one you have felt in the silence. I am the peace you longed for, but couldn't name. I am the voice that called you when your heart felt empty. Then his expression softened with unimaginable compassion. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. The words were not recited. They were alive. They carried creation, identity, purpose. They carried the reason for existence itself. They carried him. Elena felt a surge of emotion so strong, she thought her spirit might collapse under the weight of it. This was the answer she had been unknowingly longing for her entire life. The void she carried, the emptiness she couldn't fill, suddenly made sense. It had been shaped for him, made to hunger for him, made to recognize him. Jesus stepped even closer, until she felt engulfed in his warmth. I am the one who was with you in every moment you felt alone, he said. The one who watched over you when you believed no one saw you. Scenes from her life flashed around them. Not a full life review, but glimpses. She saw herself crying at age 9 after losing her dog. She saw herself sitting alone at school, convinced she had no friends. She saw herself at 24, heartbroken from a failed relationship. She saw herself just months ago, staring out her apartment window, whispering, God, are you there? In every scene, he was there, standing beside her, reaching toward her, waiting for her heart to turn. Tears, spiritual tears, flowed from a place deeper than memory. Then Jesus spoke again, and this time his tone shifted. There was still compassion, but now there was also purpose. You were not brought here by accident, he said. I allowed this moment because there is something you must see. The atmosphere grew still, thick with significance. You will return to your body, he continued gently, and when you do, you must speak. You must tell them what is coming. Elena felt something inside her tighten, an awareness, a calling she had never imagined she would bear. Jesus looked into her eyes, and in his gaze she felt eternity itself. 4 events will unfold, he said. Events that will begin in January 2026. Events the world is not prepared for. Events you must testify about. Her spirit trembled, not from fear, but from responsibility. Before she could ask what these events were, Jesus extended his hand once more. Come, he said, I will show you. But before we continue, I want to ask you, the viewer, if Jesus appeared to you and told you he had chosen you for a mission, how do you think your life would change? Share your answer in the comments. You may inspire someone else who feels called, but afraid. When Jesus extended his hand toward Elena, the realm around them shifted instantly. The soft, glowing tunnel faded, and a new scene began to take shape, as if the fabric of heaven opened to reveal a window into Earth's future. Elena felt no fear, only a solemn anticipation. She knew whatever she was about to witness was not symbolic. It was not metaphor. It was a literal event, a real moment in human history that had not yet arrived. The light around her condensed into a swirling mist, and within it, she began to see Earth, but different. A large map formed beneath her, continents shimmering like living silhouettes. The month January 2026 pulsed in the air, bright as fire. The atmosphere darkened, not with evil, but with gravity. An event was about to reveal itself. Jesus stood beside her, his presence steady and unshaken. The first will awaken many, he said softly. And then the vision clarified. A massive global disruption. Elena saw what looked like an enormous network. Lines of connection stretching across continents, glowing faintly like the circuitry of the human world. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then everything went dark. Not the world, but the systems that held it together. Communication grids, financial platforms, digital networks, banking institutions, transportation systems relying on synchronization, government infrastructures. It was as if a global pulse struck simultaneously in multiple nations, disrupting everything reliant on digital stability. A worldwide cyber disruption, not caused by a single country, not caused by warfare, not caused by human strategy. It was triggered by something deeper, a vulnerability humanity ignored until it was too late. Elena watched cities flicker like dying embers. Screens everywhere went black. Banks froze. Flights halted. Hospitals struggled. People panicked as the digital skeleton of civilization collapsed for days. She heard voices across nations, fear-filled voices. "My card isn't working. How do we buy food? Everything is offline. They said systems will come back soon, but no one knows what happened. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The world wasn't ending, but the world was shaken. It wasn't total chaos, but it was a warning, a wake-up call. Dependency had become humanity's weakness." Jesus spoke again, his tone steady, filled with sorrow and purpose. "In January 2026, the world will learn how fragile its foundations are, not to destroy hope, but to redirect it." Elena sensed the message behind his words. Technology was not evil, but trust had been misplaced. Humanity had anchored its security to systems incapable of saving them. She watched people turn to governments for answers, and governments having none. She watched leaders stand before cameras, offering reassurances they themselves did not believe. She watched families gather around candlelight, talking to one another for the first time in years without screens between them. And she saw something else, something Jesus wanted her to notice. In the midst of uncertainty, small lights began to appear. Not physical lights, but spiritual ones. Individuals, in homes, in parks, in shelters, began to pray. Some prayed for the first time in decades. Some whispered desperate pleas into the dark. Some returned to the faith they had abandoned. Fear did not lead to destruction. Fear led to awakening. Jesus looked at Elena with a sadness that was not despair, but compassion. "The first event," he said, "is allowed, not sent. It reveals the foundation on which each heart stands. Some will cling to fear, but many will turn to me." She watched as systems slowly began to restore. The world did not collapse, but the world was humbled, and people were changed. The vision dimmed, folding back into the mist from which it came. Elena felt a weight inside her spirit, a reverence for what she had seen. The event was not meant to punish, but to awaken. It was a shaking of the surface to expose the deeper longing hidden inside every human soul. Jesus turned to her. "There are 3 more," he said, "and each will call the world closer to truth." Before we continue, I ask you, the viewer, if a sudden global disruption happened, cutting off the systems you rely on every day, where would you turn for peace? What would you feel God calling you to notice? Write your reflection in the comments. Your words may prepare someone who will need strength in uncertain times. As the vision of the first event faded, the atmosphere around Elena shifted again. The mist dissolved, and a deeper stillness settled over the realm. She sensed the gravity of what was coming next. Something heavier, more emotional, something that touched not just systems, but the human heart itself. Jesus stood beside her, his presence steady, unchanging. He did not show fear. He did not show anger, only a profound sorrow and a deep purpose behind it. Without a word, he lifted his hand, and the vision of earth opened once more. This time, the world that appeared below was covered in clouds, massive gray spirals, moving in unnatural patterns. The atmosphere trembled, oceans shifted. The air itself seemed to groan, as if creation were straining under a weight it could no longer bear. Elena felt her spirit tighten. A single phrase entered her mind. The earth is responding. A global climate shock. The date pulsed again. January 2026. Then it happened. In multiple regions of the world, different continents, different climates, extreme weather events erupted almost simultaneously. Not random storms, not seasonal anomalies, but a sudden, coordinated upheaval, as if nature itself were losing balance. She saw catastrophic flooding hitting coastal cities that had never experienced such levels. Record-breaking winter storms sweeping across regions unprepared for severe cold. Heat waves in the southern hemisphere so intense that power grids failed and wildlife collapsed. Violent windstorms, twisting through cities and farmlands, tearing apart what once felt stable. But the most shocking part was not the severity, it was the speed. Weather patterns shifted overnight. Systems that normally took days or weeks to build ignited in hours. People stood in disbelief, staring at news broadcasts that sounded surreal. This is unlike anything meteorologists have ever seen. Climate models did not predict this. Government agencies are overwhelmed. Response teams are at capacity. We are facing a global anomaly. Elena saw families evacuating homes they had lived in for generations. She saw farmers watching crops drown or burn. She saw entire neighborhoods displaced, not by war, but by the earth itself. The world wasn't ending, but the world was being warned. Jesus watched silently as the scenes unfolded. His expression carried compassion so deep, it made Elena ache. Then he spoke. The second event is not punishment. It is consequence. The words struck her spirit with solemn clarity. The earth was created in balance, he said. But humanity has abandoned stewardship and embraced dominion without wisdom. She understood instantly. This event was not about climate debates or politics. It was about the spiritual reality underneath human behavior. The neglect, the exploitation, the pride of thinking the planet could endure endless strain without response. Jesus continued, "Creation cries out when it is wounded, and in January 2026, its cry will be heard." The vision intensified. She saw communities helping one another, neighbors opening homes, strangers sharing resources. Kindness rose in unexpected places. People who never prayed suddenly lifted their voices to heaven, and a pattern emerged. In moments of fear, people did not turn inward. They turned toward each other. They turned toward God. Jesus looked into Elena's eyes with a seriousness that pierced her. Many will call this coincidence. Many will dismiss it as weather. But those who listen will understand. This is a call to repentance and unity. For the first time, Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling fully upon her spirit. These visions were not meant for her alone. She was being asked to carry them back into a world that would not want to hear them, but would desperately need them. As the storm-filled earth faded, Jesus spoke once more. There are 2 more events, and each carries a deeper meaning. Before we move on, I want to ask you, the viewer, if a sudden global climate upheaval struck your region, how prepared would your heart be? Not just your home. What spiritual truth do you feel the world has been ignoring? Share your heart in the comments. Your reflection may awaken someone who has been asleep to the signs around them. When the second vision dissolved, the atmosphere around Elena shifted again, this time becoming noticeably heavier. Not dark, but serious. As if heaven itself was preparing to reveal something that touched not only the physical world, but the spiritual core of humanity. Jesus remained beside her, radiant yet solemn. His presence communicated that what she was about to witness would affect nations, not through destruction, but through confrontation with truth. A new vision opened before her, this one not of storms or systems or the earth itself, but of people, crowds, cities, governments, institutions. She saw leaders standing behind podiums. She saw massive gatherings, protests, and movements filling the streets. She saw confusion spreading across nations, not because of chaos, but because of exposure. Then the word appeared in front of her, glowing in white light. Revelation. A global unveiling, hidden corruption exposed. In this vision, Elena watched as secrets long buried began surfacing across the world. Not small scandals, not isolated incidents, but a wave of revelations, simultaneous, unstoppable, affecting politics, corporations, media, and even some religious institutions. Documents leaked, recordings surfaced. Whistleblowers stepped forward with the weight of truth behind them. Nations found themselves facing revelations they could no longer deny, hide, or explain away. Jesus spoke softly. The third event will expose what has been hidden in darkness. Elena saw. High-ranking officials forced to resign as corruption came to light. Major corporations collapsing under the truth of unethical practices. governments scrambling to control narratives they could no longer contain, social movements rising with unprecedented unity, not based on rage alone, but on a shared demand for truth. The world did not descend into chaos. Instead, it woke up. People began questioning systems they had trusted for decades. Communities started forming around values rather than ideologies. Truth, something often distorted, became a global topic. Not everyone welcomed the exposure. Some fought it, some denied it, some tried to bury it, but the truth refused to return to silence. Jesus spoke again, his voice deep with purpose. I am allowing what is hidden to be revealed, so that what is false may fall, and what is true may stand. Then another scene unfolded, smaller, but more intimate. She saw individuals sitting alone in their homes, confronted not by global corruption, but by personal truth. Secrets they had hidden, wounds they had ignored, choices they had justified. This revelation was not just global, it was personal. Jesus continued, "The world cannot be healed until the heart is confronted." Elena watched as some people broke down, confessing truths they had carried in silence. Others reconciled with loved ones. Still others ran back to God after years of spiritual distance. The third event was not destruction. It was purification, a cleansing, a stripping away of illusions, a moment where false foundations crumbled so the world could stand on something real. Then Jesus turned to her with a gaze that pierced straight through her spirit. Many will fear this moment, but those who love truth will rejoice. She felt those words settle into her like fire, not burning, but refining, anchoring her calling. This event, she realized, would shake nations and hearts at the same time, not through disaster, but through truth, which can be even more disruptive than storms or systems collapsing. The vision faded, and the realm grew still. Jesus spoke one final time before revealing the fourth event. What is weak will fall. What is hidden will surface. What is true will rise. The world will not return to what it was. Before we continue, I ask you, the viewer, if hidden truth came to light, in your life, in your country, or in the world, how would it change you? Do you fear truth, or do you welcome it? Share your reflection in the comments. Your courage might spark someone else's awakening. The realm around Elena grew quiet, quieter than before. Not an ordinary stillness, but a sacred one. A stillness that carried weight, intention, destiny. Jesus stood beside her, and even though he had been calm throughout the visions, something shifted now. There was a gravity in his expression, not fear, not sorrow, but a deep seriousness that made the atmosphere thrum with importance. Elena sensed it immediately. The fourth event was different. Not physical, not environmental, not political or societal. It was spiritual, and it would affect the entire world at once. The mist parted. The earth appeared again below them. But this time, what she saw was not disaster. It was darkness. Not the darkness of night, but a spiritual fog covering hearts, minds, and nations. Jesus lifted his hand slightly, and the word illuminated before her. Division. But then, instantly, another word appeared beside it. Separation. At first, she didn't understand. Then Jesus spoke. In January 2026, the fourth event will not come through nature or through systems. It will come through my spirit. The vision sharpened. A massive spiritual separation. A global heart awakening. She saw people across the world, millions, going about their daily lives, working, scrolling, arguing, sleeping, pretending not to feel the emptiness inside them. Then something invisible began moving through the earth. Not wind, not sound, not fire, but spirit. A divine stirring. A call. A vibration that reached beyond culture, language, and belief systems. Some people felt it instantly, like a whisper in their soul, a pull toward truth, a yearning for God they could no longer ignore. Others felt threatened by it, resistant, uncomfortable, agitated by a presence they did not understand. And in a moment that took Elena's breath, she saw the entire world divide, not into nations or ideologies, but into two kinds of hearts. Hearts that opened, hearts that closed. Not judgment, not punishment, but revelation. Jesus spoke gently, though his words carried thunder. What is lukewarm will not remain lukewarm. She saw people falling to their knees in repentance, in surrender, in awakening. Homes becoming places of prayer again. Young people encountering God in dreams and visions. Hard-hearted individuals suddenly breaking open under conviction and love. She also saw others doubling down in pride, denial, anger, rejecting the stirring, mocking it, running from what they felt inside. This was the separation. Not forced, not imposed, but chosen. A global spiritual polarization, prompted by the presence of God moving across the earth. Elena felt her spirit tremble as Jesus continued. In January 2026, I will call the world. Some will hear me, some will resist me, but every heart will feel me. The vision deepened. She saw churches overflowing, as well as living rooms, parks, shelters, prisons. People crying out to God without knowing why. An outpouring of spiritual hunger unlike anything seen in generations. Not a revival in one nation, not a movement contained to one people, but a worldwide spiritual awakening, a shaking of hearts, a reorienting of souls. Then Jesus looked at her with eyes that held eternity. This event is mercy, he said, the greatest mercy. For before the world enters the next season, every heart will be given a chance to choose. Elena felt tears, soul tears, form within her. This fourth event was not about fear. It was about invitation. A final calling to turn toward truth, toward light, toward him. She understood now why Jesus had shown her these visions. They were not predictions for entertainment. They were not warnings meant to terrify. They were preparations. A message from heaven so the world would not be caught in confusion, but awakened in expectation. As the final vision faded, the realm around her filled with a profound peace. Jesus spoke one last time before preparing her to return. Tell them I am calling the world. Tell them I am near. Before the next chapter, I ask you, do you feel a spiritual shift happening in the world right now? Have you felt a pull inside you, toward God, toward truth, toward awakening? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your honesty may touch someone who feels the same stirring, but is afraid to acknowledge it. The final vision dissolved, and for the first time since leaving her body, Elena felt something unfamiliar creeping back into her awareness. Weight. Not emotional weight, not spiritual weight, but physical weight. A pull, a gravity, a sensation of density she had forgotten. She looked at Jesus, fear touching her spirit for a moment. Not fear of him, but fear of leaving him. His expression softened, as if he understood every unspoken question. You must go back, he said gently. Your time here is not finished. Elena felt her entire being tremble. She didn't want to go back. After experiencing the overwhelming peace of his presence, after feeling the freedom of being outside her wounded body, after witnessing the profound truth of the spiritual realm, earth felt small, heavy, painful. Jesus stepped closer, placing his hand over her heart, a gesture so tender it made her spirit ache with longing. What I have shown you must be spoken, he said. Many will feel fear in the coming days, but your words will bring understanding. Your testimony will bring hope. A mission, a calling, a responsibility she had never imagined. Elena whispered, not with her mouth but with her soul, will you be with me? Jesus' eyes softened into a depth of love she could hardly bear. I have never left you, he said, and I never will. Then the realm of heaven began to fade around her, the light dimming, the peace thinning, the weight of physical existence increasing. She felt herself being pulled backward, through the tunnel of light, through layers of awareness, through the veil between eternity and mortality. Then, pain, sharp, overwhelming electric pain, It hit her like a tidal wave as her consciousness slammed back into her broken body. Her ribs burned. Her head throbbed. Her lungs struggled to expand. Her skin ached with cold. Voices surrounded her. "She's breathing. Stay with us. Keep her awake. We're losing her. No, wait. Pulse is stabilizing." Her eyelids fluttered open. Bright lights. A mask over her face. The smell of antiseptic. The weight of blankets. Machines beeping. Hands pressing on her wounds. Everything felt too loud. Too bright. Too heavy after the softness of eternity. She tried to speak, but her throat felt like fire. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not from physical pain, but from longing. She had touched heaven. She had stood before Jesus. And now she was back, inside a fragile, wounded, temporary body. The contrast was unbearable. In the days that followed, she lay in a hospital bed surrounded by bandages, wires, and murmured conversations from her family. Doctors said it was a miracle she survived. They expected brain damage. She had none. They expected internal bleeding. It resolved unnaturally fast. They expected memory loss. She remembered everything, especially the parts no human doctor could explain. But with the memories came responsibility. The visions of the 4 events. The global shaking. The awakening of hearts. The calling from Jesus. She felt the urgency burning inside her. Some nights she woke up weeping because she missed the presence of Jesus so deeply her soul felt bruised. Other nights she woke gasping from the overwhelming mission he placed in her hands. Tell them. Those words echoed in her mind like a heartbeat. She knew people would doubt her. She knew some would laugh. Some would mock. Some would call her delusional. Some would fear what she shared. But Jesus hadn't asked her to convince the world. He had asked her to speak. So she made a decision. As long as she had breath, as long as her heart beat, as long as her voice could reach even one person, she would testify. She would share what she saw. She would warn with compassion. She would call people to awaken. She would remind humanity that God is not distant, that Jesus is near, that heaven still speaks. Before this chapter ends, I ask you, if you were given a message from heaven and a second chance at life, would you have the courage to share it, even if the world doubted you? Write your answer in the comments. Your words might inspire someone who is afraid to live out their calling. Elena's life was never the same after her encounter with Jesus. Not because she returned with fear, but because she returned with clarity. She now understood the emptiness she carried for years. It wasn't depression. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't weakness. It was a calling, a yearning for the one she was created to know. And the visions Jesus showed her, the 4 events of January 2026, were not meant to terrify the world. They were meant to prepare it, to awaken hearts that have been sleeping, to remind humanity that life is more fragile, more spiritual, and more interconnected than we realize. Her message is simple, but it burns with urgency. Turn your heart toward Him now. Do not wait for fear to force you. Do not wait for events to shake you. Choose Him while your heart is still soft. Elena shares her story not to elevate herself, but to elevate the truth she encountered. Jesus is real. Jesus is near. And Jesus is calling the world. Every prophecy she was shown carries 2 threads. A warning that the world is heading into a season of shaking. A hope that God is giving humanity a chance to return, to awaken, to realign. What she experienced is not about predicting doom. It is about inviting transformation. Her survival was not luck. It was assignment. She walks today with scars, physical ones from the accident, and spiritual ones from witnessing the weight of what is coming. But she also walks with a fire in her soul, a fire to speak, a fire to warn, a fire to awaken anyone willing to listen. And now, that message reaches you, not by chance, not by coincidence, but because something inside you, maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe longing, brought you here. So before this video ends, I want to ask you directly, which of the 4 events spoke to you the most? The global disruption, the climate shift, the unveiling of truth, or the spiritual separation? Write it in the comments. Your answer may resonate with someone who needs it. And one more question. Maybe the most important of all. Do you feel that Jesus has been calling you, even quietly? If yes, don't ignore that pull. It could be the beginning of your own awakening. Finally, if this testimony touched you, moved you, or opened your eyes in any way, subscribe to the channel, not just to follow the story, but to stay connected to messages that can strengthen your spirit and prepare your heart for the days ahead. Your subscription helps this message reach more people. And trust me, more people need to hear this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And may your heart stay open, because the one who called Elena may be calling you too.